What could make the deadliest outlaws of Brazil's backlands tremble with fear? Maria Bonita, the fierce woman who stood beside the infamous Lampião, didn't justify the norms of her time, she completely shattered them. In a world ruled by violent men, Maria Bonita wasn't a passive companion. She was a force in her own right. And when she made a mark, even the deadliest of men in the Cangaço learned to respect her or fear her. Maria Bonita's story is as legendary as the men she fought alongside, but it's also one of extreme defiance. The Cangaço was a world where violence was the only language and strength was measured by how much blood you could spill. Yet Maria Bonita, despite being a woman, not only survived but thrived in this ruthless environment. Her partnership with Lampião was not a simple relationship, it was a powerful alliance that challenged every expectation of gender, loyalty, and authority. What made Maria Bonita so powerful? Was it her beauty, her unmatched courage, or was there something deeper beneath the surface? She became as feared and respected as the men in the gang, and it wasn't just because she was the lover of the most notorious bandit in Brazilian history. It was because she was a mastermind in her own right. Maria Bonita wielded power not just through her violence but through her intelligence, her psychological mastery, and her ability to lead. But beyond the legend, what makes her story so intriguing is the shocking acts she committed against rival women in the Cangaço. What drove her to take such extreme measures, and how did her actions shape the future of the Cangaço? The answers to these questions are part of what makes her legacy unforgettable, and they reveal a woman whose power wasn't just defined by her relationship to men but by the way she turned the rules of survival on their head. Maria Bonita's role in the Cangaço is more than just history, it's a story of revolution, of a woman rewriting the script for what a woman could achieve in one of the most violent, male-dominated environments in history. What she did to rival women shocked even the most hardened bandits of the Cangaço, and in many ways, it left a mark on Brazil's criminal world that would never fade. As we dive deeper into her life, prepared to discover the story of a woman who didn't just survive the brutality of the Cangaço, she became one of its most terrifying figures. This is Maria Bonita, and the story you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about the Cangaço. Maria Bonita wasn't always the legendary figure she's remembered as today. She came from humble beginnings, born into the harsh reality of the Brazilian backlands, where survival was a daily struggle. But what set her apart from the thousands of others who grew up in similar conditions was her drive, her spirit, and her unyielding determination to carve a place for herself in a world ruled by violence and chaos. Before meeting Lampião, Maria Bonita was just another rural girl, doing what she could to survive. But everything changed when she crossed paths with the notorious bandit. It wasn't just the fame or the power that attracted her to him. It was the unspoken truth that she shared with him, a deep understanding of the desperation, the injustice, and the violence that had shaped their lives. Like Lampião, she had known hardship, loss, and the sting of a world that never gave anyone a fair chance. She saw in him not just a man who could take what he wanted by force, but a man who was also fighting for survival. But Maria Bonita wasn't just following him. She wasn't just the supportive partner of Brazil's most feared outlaw. She was his equal, his partner in every sense of the word. She fought as fiercely as any man in the group, proving time and again that she could hold her own in the brutal world of the Cangaço. And she did it all with a quiet strength that seemed to disarm even the toughest men in the gang. What really transformed Maria Bonita, though, was the way she embraced her position in the Cangaço. While most women of the time were bound by societal expectations, motherhood, and a quiet, submissive role, Maria Bonita threw those expectations aside. She didn't just survive in the Cangaço, she thrived in it. She became a symbol not just of loyalty to Lampião, but of a woman who could control her destiny in a world that wanted to silence her. She didn't just fight with weapons, she fought with influence, wit, and sheer willpower. Maria Bonita knew how to navigate the dynamics of the Cangaço, like few others. She knew when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act decisively and when to bide her time. Her presence wasn't just felt on the front lines. It was felt in every decision, every strategy, and every mission that the gang undertook. But Maria Bonita's story is more than just one of strength and defiance. It's the story of a woman who reshaped the Cangaço from within, showing the world that women, too, could be ruthless, powerful, and respected in a world that only seemed to leave room for men. Her transformation from a simple girl into a powerful figure who could outshine even the most notorious of the Cangaço's men is a testament to her resilience and her unyielding spirit. And this wasn't just about survival. This was about redefining what it meant to be a woman in the Cangaço. Maria Bonita wasn't just part of the gang. She was a force to be reckoned with, and her story is a reminder that in the face of oppression and violence, some people don't just survive, they change the game entirely. Maria Bonita's story is often framed through the lens of her relationship with Lampião, but to do so would be to overlook the many dimensions of her role within the Cangaço. She wasn't merely the woman behind the man. She was a key figure, a strategist, and a symbol of power in her own right. Her involvement went beyond being Lampião's partner in crime. She was a cornerstone of the gang itself, someone whose actions and decisions shaped the very direction of their violent campaign. In the Cangaço's survival was about more than just firepower, it was about influence, and Maria Bonita had influence in spades. She wasn't a passive bystander, waiting for orders from her male counterparts. Instead, she was integral to every operation, every raid, and every escape plan the Cangaço executed. She proved time and again that she had the courage and the tactical mind to make life-and-death decisions in the heat of battle just as well as any of the men. One of the most remarkable aspects of Maria Bonita's role was her ability to navigate the brutal and often violent dynamics within the gang. Like any outlaw group, the Cangaço was rife with power struggles, rivalries, and shifting alliances. But Maria Bonita was able to hold her own in this ruthless world, earning respect from men who were known for their own brutality and cunning. She was neither the submissive woman in the background nor a mere trophy of the gang's success. She was a force to be reckoned with, a partner who stood shoulder to shoulder with Lampião, as equals. Maria Bonita didn't just take part in the violent operations. She actively contributed to the gang's strategies and survival tactics. Her role extended to leadership in the field, helping to rally the troops, and even spearheading operations when necessary. When Lampião was in danger or injured, it was often Maria Bonita who took charge, guiding the gang to safety or vengeance. This level of leadership wasn't common among women in such a harsh and patriarchal environment, yet Maria Bonita thrived because of it. Moreover, she was instrumental in establishing the Cangaço's reputation for ruthlessness. Her fierce loyalty to Lampião was not just about personal devotion. It was about a shared commitment to the gang's violent code. Together, they created a mythology of invincibility, fear, and power, one that would be passed down through generations. But while Lampião was often the public face of the Maria Bonita was the one who made sure the gang's influence ran deep into the fabric of society, striking fear into the hearts of locals and the authorities alike. But Maria Bonita's power wasn't just about physical strength or leadership, it was also about her cunning and ability to manipulate the social dynamics around her. She knew exactly how to work within the gang to ensure her place and her influence. She wasn't just a warrior. She was a master of the psychology of survival. In many ways, her role in the Cangaço was an embodiment of the harsh realities of life in the Brazilian back, where violence was both a means of survival and a way to assert one's power in a world that was unforgiving and unforgivingly patriarchal. Maria Bonita, in short, didn't just play a secondary role in the Cangaço, she transformed it. She became its backbone, its equal partner, and its most influential woman, and in doing so, she redefined what it meant to be a woman in a world dominated by men. A world where survival was a constant battle and where only the strongest, most ruthless could endure. Through her actions, Maria Bonita showed the world that she was not just a woman in the Cangaço, she was the Cangaço, a defining force in a violent chapter of Brazilian history. In the world of the Cangaço, there were no rules, no limitations, and certainly no room for weakness. Among the women, Maria Bonita, despite her strength and power, did not walk an easy path. In fact, Her rise within the ranks of the Cangaço was fraught with rivalries, jealousy, and the constant challenge of proving herself not just as Lampião's partner, but as an equal in a world where women were often seen as mere accessories to the men's violence. Maria Bonita's role in the Cangaço was unconventional from the start. She was not the typical woman of the backlands, where traditional gender roles often confined women to the household or to subservient roles. In the gang, women were often seen as companions, caregivers, and occasional fighters, but they were rarely at the forefront of the action. Maria Bonita defied all of this. She didn't simply follow the men she led, fought, and lived by the same brutal code as the men did, and for that, she became a threat to other women within the gang. Many of the women in the Cangaço were not as bold or aggressive as Maria Bonita. Some were there because they were related to the men in the gang, while others had been taken as war prizes after violent raids. These women, though loyal to the gang, were not as integrated into the group's operations. But Maria Bonita's rise threatened their position. She wasn't just a passive figure. She was active, outspoken, and involved in every decision, every raid, every violent act. Her fearlessness and leadership attracted both admiration and envy, sparking intense rivalries among the women, who felt sidelined by her. But it wasn't just personal power that caused these tensions, it was also about the dynamics within the gang itself. The Cangaço operated on a strict code, one that demanded loyalty, ruthlessness, and unflinching dedication to the cause. The women in the gang, just like the men, were expected to follow this code. But what made Maria Bonita different was that she excelled at it. Her loyalty to Lampião was unquestionable, but her ambitions went beyond simply being his partner. She wanted to command respect on her own terms. As a result, some of the other women saw Maria Bonita as a threat to their position, both in the gang and in the social order of the community. They resented her for taking charge, for being the focal point of the gang's power, and for being seen as the equal to Lampião. In a world where power was everything, Maria Bonita's rise to prominence created a ripple effect that left some women scrambling to assert their own influence. These rivalries were not just about personal grudges, they were about survival. To be on top in the Cangaço meant to be untouchable, and the women who couldn't match Maria Bonita's strength and power found themselves at odds with her, vying for their own place within the violent ecosystem of the gang. Some women, especially those who were less integrated into the Cangaço's operations, looked at Maria Bonita with a mixture of envy and fear. They knew that the men in the gang, including Lampião, had a special place in their hearts for her, and they resented the fact that Maria Bonita was able to command such respect and admiration from them. They couldn't help but compare themselves to her, and in that comparison, they felt small, weak, and insignificant. This tension played out in subtle ways through gossip, backhanded comments, and even open hostility when Maria Bonita wasn't around. But Maria Bonita was no stranger to the power games of the She knew that to survive, she needed to stay ahead of the other women, to ensure that she was seen as an asset, not a liability. She was fiercely protective of her status and would not allow anyone to undermine her position within the group. Her confidence and strength became a double-edged sword. While it ensured her survival, it also made her a target for those who felt threatened by her. In the brutal world of the Cangaço, where every move could be the difference between life and death, these rivalries among the women were just another layer of the complex social fabric that defined the gang. They were not just fighting for power, they were fighting for their very existence, their place in a world that didn't care for them. And Maria Bonita, with all her power, was at the center of this struggle. She had to prove herself constantly, not just to the men in the gang, but to the women who could just as easily see her as an enemy. But despite these challenges, Maria Bonita stood firm. She never let the rivalries or the whispers from other women shake her resolve. She knew her value, and she fought to ensure that everyone else knew it too. And in the end, it was this unshakable belief in herself that made her one of the most feared and respected figures in the history of the Cangaço. Maria Bonita was not just a fierce outlaw. She was a master of psychological warfare, a woman who understood the power of the mind as much as she did the power of the gun. In a world where survival depended not only on strength, but also on strategy, Maria Bonita's ability to manipulate the emotions, thoughts, and actions of those around her became one of her most lethal weapons. Her psychological influence over the men in the Cangaço was profound. Lampião, her partner, was the recognized leader of the gang, but it was Maria Bonita who often dictated the tone and direction of their actions. Her control over the gang didn't come from brute force alone. She didn't need to overpower the men physically. She knew that by mastering their emotions and thoughts, she could manipulate them to her advantage. One of the most striking aspects of Maria Bonita's psychological power was her ability to inspire unwavering loyalty. It wasn't just the fear of her strength that made the men respect her, it was her ability to connect with them on a deeper level. She knew how to speak to their deepest fears and desires, understanding exactly what each person needed to hear in order to remain loyal to the gang. In many ways, Maria Bonita became a symbol of authority, not through her dominance, but through her understanding of the human psyche. She knew how to make the men feel like they were part of something larger than themselves, something dangerous yet unbreakable. She made them believe in a vision, a world where their actions had meaning beyond mere survival. It wasn't just about the violence, it was about the identity she helped them craft, the bond they shared through their defiance of society. But Maria Bonita's psychological power wasn't limited to the men. She also understood the women in the Cangaço and how to navigate the complex web of emotions, power struggles, and rivalries among them. While many of the other women in the gang were there out of necessity or loyalty to their male counterparts, Maria Bonita had a different approach. She knew that in a world dominated by men, women had to carve out their own power. She wasn't just a follower of Lampião, she was a partner who understood how to assert her own influence. Maria Bonita's ability to manipulate the dynamics within the group helped her maintain her status as one of the most respected figures in the Cangaço. She used her intelligence, her wit, and her emotional understanding to create a space where she was untouchable, even by the other women who might have seen her as a threat. What made Maria Bonita's psychological power even more dangerous was her ability to remain calm in the most chaotic and dangerous situations. In a world where emotions ran high, where every day could mean death, Maria Bonita's composure gave her an edge. She was not easily rattled by fear or anger, and this made her an even more formidable leader. Her calm demeanor in the face of violence and danger was often the stabilizing force the gang needed. While others panicked or let their emotions cloud their judgment, Maria Bonita remained focused and calculated, always thinking several steps ahead. Her ability to control her own emotions also allowed her to manipulate the emotions of those around her. She could make the men feel empowered or vulnerable, depending on what the situation required. She could make them doubt their enemies, question their own motivations, and ultimately act in ways that suited her goals. In this way, Maria Bonita's psychological influence was not just about persuasion, it was about control. She knew how to play on the deepest insecurities and desires of those around her, using their own weaknesses as leverage to achieve her objectives. But Maria Bonita's psychological mastery wasn't limited to her manipulations of others. She also had an intimate understanding of the human condition, how people break, how they fight, and how they resist. She had lived a life full of hardship and struggle, and she knew what it took to survive in such a brutal world. This understanding of human suffering gave her an edge in battle and in negotiations. She knew how far she could push someone before they broke, and she knew how to exploit their weaknesses without overstepping. In many ways, Maria Bonita was ahead of her time. While many people saw violence and physical strength as the only ways to survive, she understood that the mind was just as powerful a weapon. Her ability to manipulate, control, and inspire others made her not just a survivor, but a leader who reshaped the world of the Cangaço. Her psychological power was the force that kept the gang together, that kept them loyal, and that kept them moving forward even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Maria Bonita was not just a figure of strength and violence. She was a woman who knew how to use her mind, her emotions, and her understanding of human nature to control the world around her. And in the brutal world of the Cangaço, where violence was the ultimate currency, Maria Bonita understood that the real power lay in the ability to control not just the body, but the soul. Maria Bonita wasn't just a figure of strength in the Cangaço. Cangaço. She was a woman who understood the value of revenge in a world where betrayal and power struggles were commonplace. In the Cangaço, loyalty was everything, and betrayal, whether real or perceived, was dealt with severely. But Maria Bonita didn't just tolerate betrayal, she made it clear that she was a force to be reckoned with when it came to retribution. Her revenge was swift, brutal, and served as a powerful reminder of the unrelenting code of the Cangaço. One of the most infamous instances of Maria Bonita's vengeance came after the gang faced an attempted betrayal from within. A member of the Cangaço had begun to question Lampião's leadership, causing a rift in the group. This wasn't just an act of defiance, it was a direct challenge to the very heart of the Cangaço. Betrayal within the gang was an act that could never be forgiven, and Maria Bonita wasn't about to let this one slide. What makes Maria Bonita's vengeance particularly terrifying is the cold precision with which she carried it out. She didn't just punish the traitor, she made an example of them, ensuring that the rest of the gang saw exactly what happened when someone dared to cross the line. In the world of the Cangaço, the act of revenge wasn't just about restoring personal honor, it was about preserving the integrity of the gang itself. To show mercy or hesitation would have weakened their position and invited more betrayal. Maria Bonita's revenge was often brutal, but it was always calculated. She knew how to create fear without leaving room for retaliation. Unlike the men in the Cangaço, who often relied on raw violence to make their point, Maria Bonita had an innate understanding of psychological warfare. She would use fear, silence, and intimidation to break her enemies before she ever lifted a finger. By the time her wrath was unleashed, there was nothing left for the enemy to do but accept their fate. Her vengeance wasn't limited to male traitors. Even the women of the Cangaço weren't safe from Maria Bonita's wrath if they crossed her. In the fiercely competitive world of the Cangaço, power struggles were common, and not all the women shared Maria Bonita's vision of dominance. Some were jealous of her position, while others saw her as a threat to their own ambitions. For those women who dared to challenge her, Maria Bonita had a way of ensuring they never did so again. The methods she used to deal with rival women were just as brutal, if not more so, than what she applied to the men. But her revenge wasn't just about physical violence. Maria Bonita also understood the power of emotional and psychological punishment. She knew how to break someone without ever laying a hand on them. Whether it was using silence to manipulate her enemies, spreading rumors to undermine their confidence, or forcing them into situations where they were bound to fail, Maria Bonita's ability to dismantle her enemies was unparalleled. Her revenge was as much about power dynamics as it was about punishment. The stories of her vengeance became legends, passed down by those who feared her and those who witnessed her wrath firsthand. Even those who had once been her allies knew not to cross her. There was a deep, almost mythic quality to Maria Bonita's revenge. The mere thought of her retribution was enough to keep many in line, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Her reputation for being unforgiving and ruthless ensured that there were few who dared to challenge her, and those who did were left with nothing but regret. But Maria Bonita's acts of vengeance were not just about power, they were also about survival. In a world where the weak were consumed by the strong, showing mercy could be fatal. Maria Bonita's brutality wasn't driven by a thirst for violence, it was driven by the need to stay alive in a world where any sign of weakness could lead to death. In the brutal hierarchy of the Cangaço, showing any hesitation in punishing betrayal would have signaled weakness, and weakness was something that Maria Bonita simply could not afford. Her revenge was a testament to her understanding of the world she lived in. Maria Bonita didn't just survive the Cangaço, she thrived in it by mastering the art of retribution. She knew that in a world built on fear and violence, there was no room for mercy. Her acts of vengeance were not just personal, they were the foundation of her power, the reason why she was able to command such respect and fear among both the men and women of the Cangaço. Maria Bonita's revenge was the very embodiment of the Cangaço esse brutal code. She showed that in this world, loyalty was everything, and betrayal, no matter the form, was a death sentence. But perhaps what was most remarkable about her vengeance was the way it solidified her place in the gang's hierarchy. Through her ruthless acts of retribution, she not only ensured her survival, but also established her legacy as one of the most feared and respected figures in the Congo. Maria Bonita wasn't just a leader among the Cangaço. She was a disruptive force in a world dominated by men, fundamentally shifting the gender dynamics within the gang. Her rise to power and influence wasn't just an act of survival, it was a declaration that women could not only exist in such a violent, patriarchal environment, but could thrive in it, rewriting the very rules that had been set for them. In the Cangaço, women were often relegated to secondary roles. They were seen as companions, caretakers, and sometimes fighters, but rarely as equals to the men. The brutal world of the Cangaço was primarily one of male violence, with the men calling the shots, leading raids, and making the critical decisions. But Maria Bonita proved that women, too, could wield power, make decisions, and drive the gang's actions. Maria Bonita's ability to establish herself as an equal to Lampião was a game changer. She wasn't just a passive participant in the Cangaço. She was a co-leader, a strategic partner, and a powerful symbol of strength. Unlike the other women in the gang, who followed the men without question, Maria Bonita demanded respect and recognition for her contributions. She was as ruthless, as cunning, and as decisive as any man, and it wasn't long before the men of the Cangaço recognized that they couldn't ignore her influence. What made Maria Bonita's role even more revolutionary was how she represented a shift in the way women were perceived in the Cangaço. Prior to her involvement, women were often seen as part of the gang's personal lives, not integral to its operations. They were there for the ride, so to speak, and their involvement was mostly limited to being the companions of the male outlaws. But Maria Bonita wasn't content with that. She was as much a part of the gang's violence, strategy, and leadership as any man. Her role shattered the traditional gender boundaries of the... She wasn't just Lampião's woman, she was Maria Bonita, a feared and respected figure in her own right. She didn't just passively follow, she actively participated, made decisions, and had a say in the direction the gang took. Through her actions, she forced a rethinking of what a woman's role could be in such a brutal world, where men typically held the power. But Maria Bonita's influence wasn't just about the direct role she played in the gang. She also reshaped the way women were viewed by the rest of the Cangaço and the communities they terrorized. Her rise to power showed other women that they too could hold sway, that they too could command respect, and that they too could be as feared as the men who led the charge. Her example encouraged other women in the Cangaço to take a more active role, to step out from the shadows of their male counterparts, and to demand recognition for their contributions. This shift in gender dynamics didn't just challenge the status quo within the gang, it also had wider implications for the communities the Cangaço affected. Women in the rural Brazilian backlands often had little power or voice, confined to traditional roles defined by patriarchy. But Maria Bonita's rise offered a new model of female strength and leadership. She showed that women could be more than just victims or bystanders. In a man's world, they could be active participants, even leaders, in a world built on violence and survival. However, this shift was not without its challenges. Maria Bonita's leadership often put her in direct conflict with the other women in the Cangaço. Not every woman welcomed her rise to power. Some saw her as a threat, both to their place in the gang and to the traditional power dynamics that had governed the Cangaço for so long. The rivalry between Maria Bonita and some of the other women was fierce, and their relationships were often marked by jealousy, competition, and even sabotage. But this only made Maria Bonita's position more secure. She didn't let the rivalries or the jealousy of the other women undermine her position. Instead, she used these tensions to solidify her power, ensuring that she remained at the center of the Cangaço's operations. Her ability to navigate these complex dynamics among both men and women was one of the key factors that allowed her to maintain her status as one of the most respected and feared figures in the gang. Maria Bonita's impact on the Cangaço's gender dynamics wasn't just about her personal story. It was about the ripple effect her leadership had on the other women in the gang. Her rise to power forced the Cangaço to reconsider the role women could play in their brutal world. And by doing so, she laid the groundwork for future generations of women who would not only fight for their survival, but also for their right to lead. In the harsh and unforgiving world of the Cangaço, Loyalty was the cornerstone upon which everything rested. The men, the women, and the gang as a whole depended on one thing: their unwavering allegiance to the cause, to each other, and to their leader, Lampião. But no one embodied this loyalty more fiercely than Maria Bonita. Her devotion to Lampião was legendary, but it wasn't just blind loyalty, it was a bond forged in shared struggle, shared values, and shared power. Maria Bonita didn't just follow Lampião. She was his partner in every sense of the word, and together they created a bond that would become the very heart of the loyalty in the Cangaço wasn't just about showing up for the battles. It was about standing together when everything else fell apart. And when the pressure was highest, when the authorities were closing in and the gang was at its most vulnerable, Maria Bonita proved time and again that her loyalty to Lampião was unshaken. She stood by him through everything: the raids, the ambushes, the betrayals, and the constant threat of death. In a world where alliances shifted on a dime and betrayals were a daily occurrence, Maria Bonita's steadfastness made her a rock in the storm. What set Maria Bonita's loyalty apart was the way she balanced her devotion to Lampião with her own sense of agency. She wasn't just a passive figure in their relationship. She actively contributed to the decisions and strategies that shaped their survival. Her loyalty wasn't a matter of simple obedience. It was a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. She didn't just follow orders, she helped make them. And in the brutal world of the Cangaço, where survival depended on quick thinking and decisive action, this partnership was invaluable. But Maria Bonita's loyalty to Lampião was more than just a strategic alliance. It was also deeply personal. Despite the violence, the chaos, and the constant threat of death, Maria Bonita's love for Lampião was real. It wasn't just about power or survival, it was about a shared sense of purpose, a shared commitment to the gang's brutal code of conduct, and a deep, unbreakable bond between the two. While their relationship was often overshadowed by the violence of their world, there was an undeniable emotional connection that fueled their actions and decisions. But this loyalty was also what made Maria Bonita vulnerable. In the world of the Cangaço, loyalty was a double-edged sword. To be loyal was to be bound, and there was no escaping the consequences if the bond was broken. Maria Bonita's loyalty to Lampião, while a source of strength, also made her a target for those who sought to undermine their power. In a world where betrayal was as common as survival, the loyalty Maria Bonita showed to Lampião was as dangerous as it was powerful. What is often overlooked in the history of Maria Bonita is the sacrifice her loyalty demanded. The Cangaço was a world built on constant movement, constant evasion, and constant violence. Loyalty wasn't just about supporting one another through battles, it was about sharing a life of hardship, of always being on the run, of always having to look over your shoulder. Maria Bonita didn't just fight for survival. She fought for the very idea of loyalty itself. Her commitment to Lampião and to the gang was not just a personal choice, it was a way of life, a constant reminder that in a world of chaos, loyalty was the one thing that could provide any sense of stability. This kind of loyalty wasn't easy to come by. It wasn't a matter of simply being there when things were going well, it was about being there when everything was falling apart. And Maria Bonita's loyalty was tested time and time again, from betrayal within the ranks to the constant threat of death from the authorities. Maria Bonita's resolve never wavered. She stayed by Lampião's side through it all, weathering every storm and facing every challenge with unwavering dedication. In the end, Maria Bonita's loyalty was what solidified her place in the She wasn't just another outlaw, she was the embodiment of the gang's unyielding bond, a symbol of strength, loyalty, and power in a world that sought to destroy them. Her loyalty to Lampião and to the Cangaço was the foundation upon which everything else was built. And as long as that bond remained unbroken, Maria Bonita remained a force to be reckoned with, both in the world of the Cangaço and in the legacy she left behind. Even after the fall of the Cangaço, the legends of Maria Bonita, Lampião, and their band of outlaws continued to live on. Their story was never simply about the brutal violence they inflicted on the Brazilian back. It became something larger, something mythic. The Cangaço was transformed from a group of outlaws to symbols of defiance, strength, and rebellion against an oppressive society. In the aftermath of their deaths, their stories grew into something more significant than reality, taking on an almost supernatural quality that continues to captivate people to this day. The myth of the Cangaço didn't just survive the deaths of its most infamous figures, flourished. Stories of their exploits, their daring raids, and their defiance of authority spread like wildfire. What was once seen as an outlaw group became an enduring symbol of resistance. The brutal tactics they employed in life were romanticized, transformed into tales of heroism and rebellion against the established order. Maria Bonita's legacy was deeply intertwined with this transformation. Over the years, she became more than just a woman in a violent band of outlaws. She became a symbol of feminine strength, defiance, and empowerment. In a time when women were expected to submit, Maria Bonita's role as a fearless leader and partner to Lampião made her a figure to be revered, feared, and admired. She was no longer just an outlaw. She was a legend, a figure whose very name inspired awe and wonder. The romanticization of Maria Bonita and Lampião was not just about their individual stories, it was about the idea of the Cangaço itself. They became larger-than-life figures, transcending their roles as mere criminals to become folk heroes in the eyes of the people. They were rebels, freedom fighters, and symbols of resistance in a country where the poor were often oppressed by the powerful. The very nature of their lives, their violence, their defiance, their unflinching commitment to their cause turned them into iconic figures of myth. But the myth wasn't without its contradictions. While the Cangaço was romanticized, the violence that fueled it was not forgotten. Maria Bonita's legacy is intertwined with stories of brutality, punishment, and terror. Her revenge against those who betrayed her was as legendary as her leadership in the gang, and those stories are still passed down today. Yet, even within this violence, there was a certain respect for her strength and resilience. Her legacy became not just about the bloodshed, but about the indomitable will to survive in a world that seemed designed to crush them. Over time, the line between fact and myth blurred. What was once a brutal, chaotic fight for survival became a tale of honor and courage, a story that people could look to for inspiration and pride. The Cangaço became a symbol of rebellion of a people who fought back when the system failed them, who took justice into their own hands when the law would not. And at the heart of this myth stood Maria Bonita, the woman who had fought as fiercely as any man and had left a legacy that would outlast her death. But the myth of Maria Bonita is more than just a story of rebellion and survival. It is a story of empowerment. In a world where women had little say in their own fates, Maria Bonita became a beacon of strength. Her legacy is not just about her actions in the Congo. It is about what she represented: the power of women to rise above societal expectations and carve their own path, even in the most dangerous and oppressive of circumstances. The myths surrounding Maria Bonita and the Cangaço continue to evolve. From books to movies to songs, their story has been retold countless times, each version adding layers to the myth, further separating fact from fiction. But despite the many retellings, the core of the story remains the same. Maria Bonita was a woman who defied the odds, who refused to be silenced, and who became a symbol of strength and resilience in a world that sought to destroy her. Her story is a reminder that legends are made not just by the deeds we perform, but by the way those deeds are remembered. The Cangaço and Maria Bonita's place within it are immortalized in the myths that have been built around them. These legends will continue to live on, inspiring future generations to come, long after the real events of the Cangaço have faded into history. Despite the countless accounts, investigations, and historical analysis of the Cangaço, many questions remain unanswered, lingering like shadows over the legend of Maria Bonita and Lampião. These unresolved mysteries are part of what keeps the story of the Cangaço so tantalizingly elusive and captivating, leaving people to wonder whether we will ever truly know the full truth about the lives of these infamous figures. One of the most significant mysteries surrounding the Cangaço is the true extent of Lampião's and Maria Bonita's personal motivations. Were they simply outlaws driven by revenge and survival? Or was there something deeper at play? Some historians believe that Lampião's rise to power was fueled by personal loss, while others suggest that his violent behavior was part of a larger, more complex vision of resistance against the oppressive Brazilian state. But Maria Bonita's role is even more mysterious. Was she solely driven by her loyalty to Lampião, or did she have her own ambitions and desires that shaped her involvement in the Cangaço? Her true motivations remain unclear, and many aspects of her personality and decisions have been lost to time. Another enduring mystery is the full extent of the rituals and superstitions that governed the lives of the Cangaço. There are numerous accounts of the bandits using charms, amulets, and supernatural beliefs to protect themselves from harm. But the details of these practices remain a well-kept secret. Were these rituals a means of psychological reassurance, or did they truly believe in the supernatural powers they invoked? What role did these beliefs play in shaping their actions and their sense of invincibility? We may never know the full extent of their spiritual practices, but they undoubtedly formed an integral part of their identity. And then there is the mystery of what really happened during the Cangaço's final days. While the death of Lampião and Maria Bonita is well documented, there are still conflicting accounts of how they died. Some say they were ambushed by the police. Others believe it was a betrayal from within their own ranks. The lack of definitive evidence leaves room for speculation, with various versions of their deaths continuing to circulate, but the true story remains a matter of conjecture, with no clear answer to the question of how the leaders of the Cangaço met their end. The disappearance of key figures in the Cangaço is another enigma. While many of the outlaws were killed or captured, there are those whose fates remain a mystery. What happened to some of the lesser-known members of the Cangaço, and why did they disappear without a trace? Were they simply lost to time, or did some of them manage to escape, living out their lives in secrecy? The unanswered questions about these individuals contribute to the enduring sense of mystery surrounding the Cangaço. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is the legacy of the Cangaço itself. While it's clear that the Cangaço's violent actions and the legends surrounding Lampião and Maria Bonita had a profound impact on Brazilian history and culture, what is less clear is how their legacy has shaped modern Brazilian identity. Are the Cangaqueiros still viewed as heroes by some, or are they seen solely as violent criminals? How has their story evolved over the decades, and what does it mean for future generations? The myth of the Cangaço continues to grow, but the true meaning of this legacy may never be fully understood. These mysteries are what make the story of Maria Bonita and the Cangaço so captivating. They leave us with more questions than answers, urging us to continue digging into the past, to keep searching for the truth. But perhaps the real allure of the Cangaço lies not in uncovering every detail, but in the very fact that so much remains shrouded in mystery. The unknowns are what keep the story alive, ensuring that the legends of the Cangaço will continue to be told for generations to come. If you've made it this far into the video, you've already unraveled part of this mystery. But as you reflect on what you've learned about Maria Bonita, Lampião, and the Cangaço, remember that the story is far from over. The questions that remain unanswered are just as important as the answers we've discovered. And the pursuit of those answers is what makes the story of the Cangaço a legend that will never truly die.